2, 3. Na, 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 na.
All right, next question comes from Rez. Why do companies not max out housing and meal stipends based on the available amount found on GSA.gov?
Oh, perfect. Okay. So this question, I'm going to give a slight backstory or a slight background of what this is. So when you are a travel healthcare worker and you follow a couple of rules, you get this amazing perk, tax-free money. And it's one of the reasons a lot of people want to become travelers. The way it works is depending on where you travel to in the country, there's a different amount that the government says, not the staffing agency, the government says on a public website that we can all see. This is the maximum amount you can pay that traveler per day for this season. It might even be different for winter to summer per day for per diems. And per diems, also called stipends sometimes, that's what we get as travelers to help us pay for two different things. There's meals and incidentals, and then there's housing.
Yep.
And so when travelers look at this website sometimes or get started, they might think, okay, the government said I should get $150 a day, whatever it is, $100 a day. That's what I'm owed. I am entitled this much money because I'm going to this zip code.
Yeah, why not? If the government says, hey, you can give this person up to $100 a day and tax-free money for housing, why not give it the money?
Yeah. And what you'll find is when you look at pay package breakdowns, it is very common for them not to be maxed out. And so sometimes people think, hey, I'm getting ripped off. That's not fair. So here's the reason why. There is the bill rate, and that bill rate is the amount of money that the staffing agencies have to work with. So depending on what that bill rate is, what the hospital or facility is willing to pay for the traveler, that's all they have to play with. And so if the bill rate is too low, the norms of our industry, they can't max out certain regions and give the most.
Yeah.
So typically how the agencies do it is they'll get a bill rate, they'll take the cut that they need to run their business, and then there's this leftover amount. And in that leftover amount, they first take out money for the taxable wages. They need to do that first. They're supposed to pay somewhere around what they'll call a reasonable cost or a reasonable payment for that specialty, taxable. So they can't drop it down to minimum wage or anything like that. They need to have a standard to say, look, physical therapists are this much taxable as a minimum that we'll go off of. A lot of times what we see in the industry is $18 to $20 an hour is the minimum an agency will go. So they'll do that first. All right, you got your $20 an hour, and then they'll look what's left. How much money is left? Then they'll take some out for travel from point A to point B to get to your location. Then they might take some out to pay for your licensure and to pay for your labs. And then whatever's left over after all of that, that's what's left for tax-free money and stipends. So they'll take all of that, as much as they can, and they'll put it all there. If for some reason you have a great bill rate and they max out the stipends, then the rest of that money will go back to the taxable wages. And that's when you might get $25 an hour, $30 an hour. But I think what's really important to know when you're thinking about your staffing agencies, you guys have aligned incentives. They want to pay you as much tax-free money as they can, just like you want as much tax-free money as you can get because they don't pay payroll taxes on it and you don't pay taxes on it. So they don't have an incentive to not max that out. The only reason they wouldn't is because the bill rate doesn't support that. That's almost always the reason why.
That's a super common thing I see on social media specifically. My recruiter's out to get me. They didn't max out my stipends. It's like, no. They want to do that.
Yeah.
There's another factor in there that is not allowing the stipends to be maxed out.
Yeah. And it's a lot to explain that to someone. So recruiters are just going to give you a pay package and you might be confused, but yeah, they're going to put as much money in tax-free places that they can while being safe and not making your taxable rate too low. Because the IRS would not like that, if they were just paying minimum wage for a physical therapist.
Yeah, or zero in taxable.
Just giving you all stipends.
Yeah. So then I guess, let me see if I understand it correctly. There's the amount of money we have to work with is the bill rate. That's the only money. It's the only money that exists, right? A portion of that bill rate goes to the agency, their margin, their cut. another part of that goes to the taxable wages. There's a minimum taxable amount that they have to pay you in order to stay kind of like kosher with the IRS. And then there are things like reimbursements for travel, reimbursements for licensure, maybe a scrubs reimbursement or something like that, or CEUs. There's like reimbursements they give you to kind of get started. And then the remaining they are able to put towards your stipends, towards your housing and meals. And then they try to max that out. And most of the time, the bill rate doesn't allow all those to get filled in appropriately. But if it does, and they do max it out, it then goes back to the taxable wages. Is that kind of a good summary?
Yeah, you nailed it. It was perfect. Yeah.
And I'll add one more. You know what I think I've seen the last couple of years with COVID specifically, right? It started with nursing, right? All the bill rate, nursing respiratory, right? Bill rates went through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had these huge pay packages and they had no problem maxing out stipends. Then later on that trickled towards therapy, right? Once kind of the surgery started to happen and rehab and the schools opening up, then you have the high bill rates for therapy. So everyone, for a brief moment in time there, for a couple of years, we're getting a lot of maxed out stipends. And so I think now you're having that kind of trickle down where rates are decreasing. And so you're not maxing out the stipends as often as you were. And then it's probably even worse for brand new travelers, right? They're like, wait. My last contract, I had maxed out stipends. Now I don't. I'm getting ripped off.
Yeah.
Versus maybe an OG traveler, right? Where you're like, oh, okay, this is more like 2019, like back to normal.
Totally. Because the market is always in cycles. Sometimes there's hardly any jobs for travel therapists or travel nurses. And then sometimes there's so many jobs. It's a cycle. And yeah, you're right. People who have done it for a long time, they just see the cycles and they kind of ride those waves.
Yep.
And then, new people who maybe got into it during those amazing rates in COVID might feel like, oh, this is what I deserve or what I was worth. But the market's correcting now that we're not in a crisis pay moment.
Yeah.
And they might be more confused about why those stipends aren't getting maxed out. Totally.
Perfect. Awesome. Great question.
Nice to meet you, hello. Never been here before, but I feel like I'm home. Yeah. Put my feet on the road, meet me over the coast. We got places to go.